All right, what's happening, everybody? So we are back. We're gonna go ahead and do part 2 of our random selection script, our ultimate best, the only one you ever need random selection script tutorial here, basically our how to make it. And if you haven't seen part 1, we're gonna go ahead and link that in the description. I'm also gonna go ahead and put a card here, bing, up in the top corner, so you should be able to see where that video is gonna come from. And if you haven't seen that, make sure you go watch that so you know what we're doing. We are gonna do a little recap to kind of go through what things are doing as quickly as we can before adding a whole lot more functionality to it. Essentially what we can do, one of the uses we can do is we have like a chest here, for example, and each of these would be like a weighted option in the chest, right? So currently getting a 60% bonus, so obviously these do not add up to 100%, but basically, you know, when you do this, it would randomly select something. Cool, we got a rare white chick pet there, which is kind of nice. So every time you do this, it's going to give you a random item. Oh man, another rare pet. And again, that's because of this pet here is actually giving me a better rarity chance and whatnot. But that is neither here nor there, so we will get right into it. Alright, so to start, we're going to do a little recap, as I mentioned, on the script that we do have written. We'll go ahead and do this in VS Code, of course, which is the wrong one. And basically what we have is we created a class using object-oriented programming. Of course, this is not directly handled inside Lua, so we have to use tables and metatables to do this. We have our class typecasted here. Not necessarily a fan of how this organized itself here. Let me see if I can fix it real quick. I actually want this to go to a new line like that, and then this would be here. There. Okay. That's much cleaner. Anyway, so we basically are defining everything that's within our what a random table object would have. So basically what's in our random selection class. That way we can have a lot easier typecasting and whatnot, type checking. And then we have some utility functions. We got our isArray, which is basically just checking if the table that we're passing in is an array or a dictionary, which would be a weighted table. If it is a weighted table, we're also calculating the weighted sum, so that we can use that, again, if you want to have your weighted probabilities go over or under 100%. So rather than, rather than having, we'll say rarity, we'll say common equals, if you want this to be like 50% and then rare to be like, 30%, and then epic to be 20%. Right there you were at 100, right? But then we could do legendary and set that to 10%, right? So technically this is 110% here, 50, 30, 20, and 10, but this will still work because it's basically going to add up. It's going to sum the total of that, and then obviously there's 4 items here, so it'll still give you an accurate random selection based on that, regardless of how your rarity or your weighted probabilities actually add up to. And then here's the real magic on how we're getting a less pseudo-random numbers. We're actually using tick modulo 1 and then multiplying that by a very large number. And that gives us a much more random result than just using random, right? So from there we have our constructor class, where we're basically taking in the table that we want to take in, which is our items. We're doing the same thing we would normally do for a class, where we're basically setting meta table. I'm casting it to our random table type so that it knows, like when you type self dot, right, it'll give us everything that's in here even before we type it, because we typecasted it up here, declared the type. And then we're basically setting a value for isArray. Basically it stores, each object will store whether or not it is an array or not, or a weighted table. The items is the actual table itself that will get selected a random item between. And then if it is not an array, that's when we calculate the weighted sum and we store that value in there as well. We have 2 separate functions that get a random item either from an array or from a weighted table, and you can call these directly on the table itself if you want to. Otherwise, you can instead just call the get random item, and this will intelligently decide based on the table style, whether it's an array or a weighted table, to select between one of these two to run. So that's just kind of the easier method there. But again, if you really want to, for whatever reason, you can just directly call one of these two. I could have hidden those, it doesn't really matter. Could have also made this more functional programming where rather than creating an object for this, we could do, you know, instead of random selection.new, we can say get random item essentially, and then fill in a table as the argument to it, and then, you know, basically perform some sort of section where essentially we check, of course, is it an array or not, and then do all this kind of stuff normally. And these would become internal functions at that point. But either way, so we're going to add some additional methods, some additional functionality to this object and to this class. So this is where object-oriented programming really shines. If you do something like this and you're cool with it for a while, that's great. And then the cool thing is, if you go, you know what, I actually need to add additional functionality to this, it's super easy. You literally just add another method to it, right? You add another function to it. So we can do that. So one of the things I wanted to check and basically be able to add is sometimes just getting a random item on its own is fine. Sometimes you want to get the item, and in the case of a weighted table, you also want to get the resulting weight that was part of that item as well. So for example, if we go into our test script, we have this test random selection server script here. So if I wanted to not only get, like, you know, either common, rare, epic, or legendary, but I also wanted to return what the actual probability percentage was, the weight, right, of that was, I can do that. So we're gonna go and do that here by adding a new method. And I'm going to, again, kind of speed up these portions here, so we'll go over things after the fact. On top of this method, which we'll call contains, no, sorry, that's the next one. We'll do get random item with weight, right? And that should actually basically do the same thing we're doing. We're going to take in our self value, which is our random table type. And then we are going to go ahead and return. In this case, it's not just going to be a string instance or nil. We're actually going to want to return the table with the item, which would be a string instance or nil, because it could still be nil, right? And then we also want to return the actual weight, which would be a number. And that will take care of that. And then, as I kind of alluded to there, another one that I want to add, make sure we add our comma here. Another one that I want to add is, we're going to say contains item. And this probably could be named better, but that's okay. Blah, 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 request text, yeah, that's fine, I know what's going on there, okay. Complaining because obviously things aren't, they're erroring out here right now. All right, so this is essentially going to be used to obviously fill in our self value here. Not replicated, what am I doing? Random table. It's the random table type, and then we're going to also take in an item, which should be either a string or instance, and then this is going to return. Essentially, we just want to return a boolean because we're just asking, does this table, or does this table contain this item? So that one's pretty simple. And then we're also going to add in a get all items, and this is going to be cool because essentially what this will do is wherever, you know, once we've created the random table object with whatever table we want, you know, which we can, we'll show we can add and remove items from that and stuff. Basically, wherever you're accessing that object from, you'll be able to just get all the items from that if you need to. So that'll be kind of useful. So we'll say, of course, this is the random table. And then we really just need to return, and this is going to be obviously a table of either string or instances, or this could be nil as well, right? If there's nothing in there, then it could end up being nil. We want to make sure that we're keeping track of that as well. And then kind of similar to how we're getting an item and getting an item with weight, we also would probably also want an option for get all items with weights. And this is going to be pretty much the same sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this so we can use it from here on out without having to type it every time. And then this is going to return essentially two different kinds of tables as a possibility. So obviously we have our, it's either going to be a string that has a number. So it's a table of string number, which is actually exactly what we have here, right? So it would return something just like this table here. Or it's going to, make sure I don't have too many spaces there. Okay. Or it's going to return a table that consists of an instance number combination, right? Key value pair there. And again, this could also just return nil if there are no items. So we want to make sure that's in there. And then this one's going to be a little more interesting. We're actually going to kind of do the same thing. We're going to say get all items with weights sorted. So this will, if sorting those is a necessary thing to do, we're going to go ahead and basically do that. And this is going to actually return just the same stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this real quick. And then make sure we copy this because I'm going to use it for the last couple that we'll add. Now, obviously, you could add a lot more other things here. But what we're going to do is we're also going to have an option to add an item to our table. So this will take in the table, and then we'll also take in an item, which again is going to be a string or instance. And then from there, we're going to return a Boolean actually. And this will essentially, no, you know what? I was going to say we could return a Boolean, a true or false if it was successful, but adding an item should always be successful for the most part, because if you've gotten to the point where you already have the table completed, the only thing that's not going to, that would fail is if you didn't put a string or instance there, and we can use an assert for that, I suppose. So it would just error out anyways. All right, otherwise we can do a remove item, and this one is going to take that, and it is going to also take the item, which will be a string or an instance. And then this will actually return a Boolean because we do want to know if that is successful or not so we can handle the error after the fact. All right, so these are the, what do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, these are the 7 things we're going to do. They are going to be a lot faster than it might look like. But let's go ahead and get to it. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the get random item with weight, and then we will move on from there. So. Okay, so I got hung up for a second because I didn't realize that I used a colon there instead of an equal sign. So that took me a little longer than I should have. Anyway, so basically what we're doing here is kind of similar to what this is, but obviously more detailed. First thing first is we're checking if it's an array, and then if it is an array, we're just running the self get random from array, and we're returning that value as an item here. And then we're returning the item as the item, and for the weight, this is going to be basically 1 divided by the length of the self.items. So basically the length of the item table itself. And in that case, that will obviously be the same across all items. So, you know, equal probability across items here. Or we'll say specifically for array items. But essentially we want to include this check here to not fail if the table is an array. We can still return the weights with an array table. It's just going to, you know, show however many items there are as divided by 1 there. So otherwise, we're just getting an item from our weighted table, and then we are grabbing the weight of the item if for whatever reason this does not have a weight to it. So if you're using a mixed table or somehow it got past the array section there for whatever reason, we are defaulting to 0 essentially. And then we're just doing the same thing. Basically, we're just returning the item, and then we're doing our item weight divided by the total weight, because obviously that would then be the probability of it. And that will constantly remain updated for us. All right, so that's a pretty simple one. We can go ahead and test this real quick. In here, we've already got our weighted tables, so that's fine. We're gonna go ahead and keep these just to make sure. So what we can do now is, so we're not gonna do this anymore. We're just going to instead do our random table, and we are going to get random item with weight. And now when we go into our Roblox here and we just run this, we'll see from our output here that we are getting nothing. So something happened there. 1 sec, I will figure it out. Oh, well, that's actually quite simple. I'm a fool. It's getting it, which is why we're not getting any errors. I just forgot to print this to the console, because otherwise that's not going to work. It's not going to show us anything. All right, so now if we run this again, we should see after a couple seconds here. There we go. So we have common 60, rare 25, common 60 again, and so forth, right? So we're getting those. Ooh, epic, nice. All right, so that takes care of that one. Let's go ahead and head back into here and head back to our random selection. So now our next one is going to be one of my probably most used one here. We're going to check if an item exists in the selection. This could be very useful for many reasons. So we're just going to go ahead and get this knocked out too. Okay, so this one is super simple. Basically, we're just checking if the table is an array, then we are just using our table.find method here. And we're just looking through our table for the item that will return the index of that item. So if I hover over the .find here, it returns the index of the first occurrence of needle within haystack. Obviously our needle is item, our haystack is our items table. And then as long as that index is not nil, then it did find it and we can return true because it does exist. Otherwise we are checking if it is an array, or sorry, not an array. Then we are just taking our dictionary, right, our weighted table, and we're checking for the index, the key basically of the item there. And as long as that is not nil, then we also return true. All right, so that one's super easy. Let's go ahead and give it a super quick test here. So we're going to go ahead and say contains item, and we're going to fill in, let's do something like potion, right? Do it like that, and if we were to go ahead and run this, we should get false. We don't need to do this in a while loop, of course, but yep, there's false. I'm going to change it now to epic, and we'll run again, and this should come up true, which it does. And then just to show as well, we're going to go ahead and change this to our array. We'll change this back to potion, which is not in there actually. Let's go ahead and do armor. And if we get back up here and run this as an array, it's still going to work for us, so it comes up true. All right, on to the next one. This is going to be one of our first get all items, and then it's going to kind of expand from there. So for the most part though, this first one is going to be the easiest, right? This is a method to get all items in an array. Sorry, not in an array, in the random table, I guess. That's fine. Yeah. All right. Okay. So real quick, this one's pretty easy. Again, checking if it's an array or not. If it is an array, we're doing a shallow clone. If you're unfamiliar with shallow clones versus deep clones, a shallow clone typically is not something you want to do unless it doesn't necessarily matter. Basically, a shallow clone will create almost a reference table to the table that you're cloning. So if you make a change to the shallow clone, it can have an effect on the original table. So again, don't always want to do that. You sometimes want to do a deep clone, which will actually show how to do a deep clone here in the next function as well, in the next method. Otherwise, if it is not an array and it is a weighted table, then we are creating a result table to return, and we're basically just looping through each item in the items table and just inserting it into there, and then we're returning that result, and that gets us what we got there. Of course, if neither of those work, then we're returning null, or if there's nothing in there, then it would return null as well. I think this is going to return a table either way, actually, so we probably want to put our nil inside here, and we will go ahead and make sure that we change that up here as well. It's probably going to do it as well. Wait, that's not right. Where am I here? Get all items. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this, and get rid of that. There we are. Okay, something like that. Okay, we'll just do that. All right, so then down here, we're not going to show this one yet. I'm going to go ahead and do the other two get all items options, since they're going to be kind of similar, but we can test them all at the same time. I don't know why, but I continue to struggle putting the equal sign versus a colon today, but that is happening. All right, so what's going on here is we're basically just creating a result table that we're going to return at the end here, which I did not do, so let's go ahead and return result. So if it's an array, we are going through each item in the array, and we're inserting into the result table. The item is item, and the weight, just like we did before. 1 divided by the length of the items table. And then obviously if it is not an array and it's a weighted table, then we have the item and the weight. So we're able to just basically fill those right in there when we insert that. And we're doing our weight divided by our total weight again to give us a more accurate result. All right, and then the next one here is kind of similar, except it's very, very similar. In fact, we're just going to add an additional bit at the end to sort it. So let me get the comment typed out here real quick. Okay, so I did just copy and paste a lot there. By the way, yeah, so returning the deep clone, so by creating a new table and basically putting things into there, so it doesn't work necessarily with the array, obviously, because the array doesn't have weights, but for the weighted table, though, in particular, right, our original table here is being pulled from, like, we're getting the item and weight from our table, but we're actually saving that inside another table that's going to look identical to it, but it is a completely different table, which is why it's a deep clone. The only downside of doing deep clones is that they can obviously take up more memory. So if that's some sort of optimization that you want to be aware of, you can go ahead and change that if need be. All right, so in addition to doing the same thing here and getting the all items with the weights, we also want to basically do a table.sort. And in this case, we are going to go ahead and sort our result table. And to do this, we're going to put an anonymous function in here. We're going to take A and B. So basically, each item in here, or each entry in here, which would be an item weight combination, right? Each of these tables will have A and B. So you'll have one compared to the other. So what we can do is return a.weight, right? Because we want to sort these by weight. And this is where it depends on how you want it to sort. So in my case, I kind of like doing it this way, which will do a less than b.weight. So what'll happen here is with less than, the lowest probability will be at the top. It'll come out first, and then the greatest probability will come out at the bottom. So in the case of like our rarity table, our legendary would come up first, and then our common would come out at the bottom, right? It'd go legendary, epic, rare, common. If you wanted it to be the other way, where you have your greatest probability up at the top, you would basically just flip this around to a greater than symbol, and that will sort them that way. So it's all personal preference there. You could also include as an argument to this method whether or not you want to sort from least to greatest or greatest to least, and then just have this change based on that. So that's totally something you could add in there if you want to add additional functionality to that. All right, so these are our get all items functions. Let's go ahead and do a real quick test on these now. So we have get all items, and right now we're on our array. So if we go ahead and test this, we should just get a copy of our table here, and you see we do. And again, that's a shallow copy. I'm gonna go ahead and change this to our weighted table real quick off screen, and then when we run this, again, we should have a this time a deep copy, or not a deep copy, but a copy of this with the items only, right? Not with the weights. All right, and then let's go back down here, and now we'll do with weights, right? And if we're doing this one with our weighted table, this is going to be an exact copy. It is going to be a deep copy though, to an extent. So this is actually going to have this broken out by item weight. Right, the way I designed this is not a deep copy. I guess I need to change my everything on that actually. So let's do that super quick, because I'm not really thinking clearly about that. So in this case, it is not returning this. It is actually returning item, which is either a string or an instance or nil, and then a weight. So it's returning a table with these, which is a number, or I guess nil as well. Could be a possibility there. Might need to put a check in if total weight is 0. Obviously you don't want to divide by 0. So I could real quick just say self.items. Well, hold on, because our calculate weighted sum, yeah, that could return 0. So that's if it's got the numbers there. So yeah, we want to say if self.calculated sum, or sorry, total sum is what we want here. Total weight is 0. I guess, you know what, we'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and say not equal to 0 or greater than 0. Yeah, if it's greater than 0, then we'll go ahead and do this, and only then. Alright, so that'll take care of that. Alright, so with that in mind, yeah, because then the result would actually just be a blank table. So these could still be nil. This is always going to be a number because it could be 0 at worst. But we could also just end up with a blank table like so. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that we have that with this as well. And then up here at the top where we are clearing these, we'll want to make sure we're changing that around as well. And this one, get all items is still gonna be the same. All right, so the last two we need to do is just add item and remove item. These are gonna be really useful again if you know, once you've made your random table object, you can basically come in here and say, oh, I need to add an item to it now. Player has unlocked a new item that we want to add to their random list or whatever. Or even if for whatever reason on the fly, you know, you want to add a new like random event or something like that, you can do that. We're going to add a new item to the, we'll call it the collection here. And we'll go ahead and get that function down here. Okay, so real quick, I want to go over something that I have missed that we should be doing here as well. So first of all, with adding the item, I just went ahead and put an assertion in there to make sure that the type of item is a string or instance. If it's not, we're going to go and return an error. Obviously, you can do that with the table itself and making sure that it's that, but this is the only time we really need to do that. But one thing I did think about is, other than just adding an item, if we are just doing an array, that's super easy. We just do that table.insert and we choose our table and the item that we want to put in there. However, we also want to include a weight, which will be a number, and it's going to be an optional value. Obviously, if it's an array and we're just adding the item, that's fine. If it's a weighted table, then ideally we want to include a weight. However, we're also going to go ahead and make sure that we are able to make that optional regardless. So down in here now, we're going to go ahead and do weight, which is a number maybe, right? All right, so now we can do weight, and I'll go ahead and get this set up. So super easy. Basically, we're just saying that weight is either the weight that was fed in here or 1 if nothing was fed in here. And then we are setting a new key to our items table of the item itself, either string or instance, right? And then setting its value to the weight, which is exactly how our weighted tables are set up anyways. And then we're adding the weight to our total weight amount there so that that gets updated as well. And then real quick, we'll go ahead and set up our remove an item from the collection. And we are going to return a boolean for error handling. So this is our last one, pretty easy here. So we're taking we're taking the item itself, just string or instance. I was going to do the assertion again. However, this kind of handles that regardless. So if it is an array, if the table is an array, then we're basically just saying, okay, see if we can find the item, and it will return the index the item is at. If that exists and it's not nil, then we are going to use our table.remove. We give it the table, and then we give it the index we want to remove the item from. You can see that when you hover over remove, removes the specified element from the array, shifting later elements down to fill the empty space if possible. And that is taking the position, which is the number, right? And then that will return true, so we know that we succeeded in removing the item. If it's not an array, it's a weighted table, then we are getting the weight by checking for the key of the item, because remember, the item would be the key in a weighted table, and then its basically value is going to be the weight. So we're just checking if weight exists, because if we check for a key and it's nil value, then weight would be nil, so that's not going to work. So as long as there is a weight there, then we know that we have our item weight combination, and we're basically just decrementing our weight from the total weight, and then we're going to go ahead and set the item's key to nil so that that removes that from that table, and again return true that that was successful. If for whatever reason it's not an array and it's not a weight, it would be nil in that case. or if this comes back and item index was nil. So in other words, if the item is not found in there in any way whatsoever, regardless of what the item actually is, because we're not doing any sort of comparison there at that point, then we are able to go ahead and return false. So I think find, yeah, it can take any value, so that should work out just fine. And it's pretty much the same thing here. You can use just about any value for a key, so that should work out fine. So that is how that's going to work. Let's go ahead and test that out real quick. Let's go into our test script here, and we are going to go ahead and do, again, we don't need this while loop here, so let's just go ahead and do random table, and let's add an item. We are in our weighted table, so let's do an uncommon, I guess would be fine. So we're going to say uncommon. And again, you can actually use instances for this. Doesn't have to be strings, but that's just what our test tables here are currently set up using. And then we need to give this a weight. We don't need to give it a weight. Again, that is an optional number. It will be 1 if not, which, you know, is pretty much always going to get selected. So keep that in mind. Well, it gets added to the total weight, so it's still going to be random, but regardless. So let's just say that this is how about 0.4, so 40%. And then we can go ahead and let's print random table, get all items, so we can see, you know, because we're doing that same thing here essentially. In fact, here, instead of doing the dot items, we can get all items, so that we're not using that private value in there anymore. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at that super quick. So if we run this, we can see that we have our epic, legendary, rare, and common with 4 values, and now we have 5 values. We've added in uncommon. Let's go ahead and actually, because we want to get this with weights, we'll go ahead and show that. So I just added with weights in there. You can see that down here with weights. So we'll go ahead and go back up to the top and take a look, and when we do this now, we can see that our uncommon here has a weight of 0.28, right? 0.17, 0.42. So this is actually giving me, these are still gonna work out the same to be the percentages we want. It does work, and that is the important thing, as we tested previously. All right, so in this case now we can go ahead and do our array table. Or actually, let's stick with the weighted table here. I'm also just going to go ahead and get all items because I don't care about the weights now. But we're going to go ahead and do remove item, and this one isn't going to take that. So let's go ahead and remove like our, let's maybe epic, right? So if we go ahead and take a look at that, we run this, we'll see that we have epic as an option there, and here it is gone. So that is removed from the table. And then lastly, wrong one. Lastly, let's go ahead and remove armor from our array table here, which contains sword, shield, and armor. So we go ahead and take a look at that, make sure it's working with arrays as well. Sword, shield, armor, just sword, shield. And lastly, we will go ahead and change this to add item, and we'll do potion. And we'll go ahead and go back up to here and run, and we get sword, shield, armor, and then we have sword, shield, armor, and potion. You can see it adds it to the end of that list there because it is an array list. All right, so with that, we now have essentially our completed ultimate random selection script that you can use. It's got all these different methods. Again, you can continue adding methods. That's the beauty of OOP. Continue adding methods. You can adjust these methods however you need to. Just know that if you make any changes to what it's expecting in the as a parameter, as an argument for calling the method, then you will have to change everywhere you are calling that method. So that is something to keep in mind. But otherwise, as long as you're thinking that out beforehand and you're creating your methods like that, otherwise that should work out pretty well. You could also, if you want to like deprecate a method, you could do something with it where, let's say instead of, if we're doing remove or add item and we decide we or remove item we just added, we also want to add weight for whatever reason. You could still add the weight in there, and then you would do kind of something similar that we did with our add item, and you would just make sure that it's technically optional, and then make sure that you give it default, right, a default value to use that. Then you don't have to go through and change everything that you're calling add item for that example, or remove item or whatever. All right, so with that, we have what we need. So I hope this was useful to everybody. Thank you for pitching in and watching as long as you have. I really do appreciate all the views that we're getting on the channel. If you want me to do more of these just how to do X sort of videos, I can definitely do that. Just keep in mind that I am not necessarily a fan of just straight up how to do X. I want you to learn how to code, so when you have the idea that you want to do something, you can know how to do it yourself and how to implement that yourself. It's a big reason that I don't put the script itself in the description or anything, or anywhere that you can find. You have to follow along, you have to learn to type and do it yourself, because that is all a big part of coding. Otherwise, I'm just going to be like everybody else, and you're just going to be able to come in here and copy and paste it and not really understand how it works. And that's not going to make you any better at scripting, even if it just gets you the thing that you want, right? For the most part, though, this is a type of video that I do want to continue to keep you doing. I do have slightly a request, I suppose, to do a proper day-night cycle video, along with keeping some sort of automatic lighting system on, so when nighttime comes up, like you have a bunch of street lights or something, like those will automatically come on, or a bunch of torches or something, that those will automatically light for you. So that is something I'm going to be doing very near in the future, probably within the week here, so keep an eye out for that. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the notify bell to be notified when that does go live. In addition, of course, I'm going to continue putting out the learn to code, learn to script using Roblox videos as well, and we are going to be getting to more advanced topics in that, including a lot of the object-oriented programming stuff that I've been using for this script here. So without getting too much into a super extra additional long-winded outro as I already have, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.